Good morning, dear brothers and sisters in Christ. We're here on this beautiful Wednesday morning. We are going to once again take this week off from our faithfulness series and really look at some passages that talk about being set free and what that means, especially in light of um, for us here, really in the United States, who are celebrating the 4th of July with the independence that we have as a free country. Now, that may look different in different places across the United States, but we want to take a look at uh, today. We're going to take a look actually at Romans chapter 8. And we're going to actually look at the very first section, verses 1 through 11, um, just simply because it does talk to us a little bit about what it means to be free, and what that looks like for us, right? So, let me ask you a question. What does it look like to be free? What does it look like to you to be free? Well, if you've ever traveled outside the United States and other countries, I have not, but my wife has. And she tells me constantly about how there are countries that she went to on mission trips when she's grown up, and how there are some countries that wanted their people to be poor, didn't want them to be free. And there's a lot of things that go on in the world that we may not always see, but we are also not free completely because we are entangled with sin. Since sin entered the world, we have been tied to sin, and we haven't fully been free. And the great news that we have that is here today in our passage from Romans 8 is that right here verses 1 and 2 show us there is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. For the law of the Spirit of life has set you free in Christ Jesus from the law of the sin and death. We do technically have freedom. Meaning we are free from sin. We are free from death. Sin and death no longer hold us down. Yes, we still get caught in sin to different levels, but it doesn't hold us. It doesn't keep us ashamed anymore, because through faith in Christ Jesus, we are set free. And we see here in the next verse, in verse 3, it says, "For God has done what the law, weakened by the flesh, could not do, by sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, he condemned sin in the flesh. So he who knew no sin became sin for us." Jesus became sin for us to set us free. He took that sin with him to the cross, and it was nailed there with him. And he took all that for you and for me and for the whole world, once again, so that he can restore that the relationship between God and creation can be restored. And what a beautiful picture that is. What a great picture is. Yeah, there is suffering. And what you'll see Paul talk about in the next 5 verses from 12 to 19 is that we are a part of that. We are a part of this this freedom. We have this freedom. We are heirs to God and to His kingdom and glory, and that's possible only in and through Jesus' death and resurrection on the cross. We are children of God. And we go on in our text for today of Romans 8 1 through 11. And we see here where Paul starts talking about, since we are set free, we don't have to then live by the ways of the flesh, by the sinful ways. Look at what verse 5 says. "For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh. But those who live according to the Spirit set their minds on the Spirit, the things of the Spirit." For to set the mind on the flesh is death, but to set the mind on the Spirit is life and peace. Verse 7 says this, for the mind that is set on the flesh is hostile to God, for it does not submit to God's law. Indeed, it cannot. Those who are in the flesh cannot please God. So look at what Paul is saying there. So Paul is saying that those who live according to the flesh, to their sinful desires, well, they are leading a life. They're leading a life of sin, of course, but that leads to death. Now, what's the difference for you and I? Because you and I, we sin. We don't always do what's right by God. We don't always follow God's law. What's the difference? What's the difference for us and those who may not believe? It's in that question. We believe, and we have the ability to go to God, go to our Heavenly Father and pray to Him. To say, Father, or cry, Abba, Father, forgive me of my sins. For all my wrongdoings, for the times when I did not and I cannot live up to what you intended for me to be. Forgive me. And through Jesus' death and resurrection, we have that possibility. We have that forgiveness of sins. We are washed clean through our baptism that is renewed each and every day of our lives, so that we are able then to set our minds on the Spirit, as Paul says. And by setting our minds on the Spirit, what does that lead us? Where does that lead us? That leads us, as Paul says, to life and to peace. Now, does that mean that we're going to have peace here on earth now? No, not all the times. We are going to suffer. We are going to go through some trying times. But if you remember, Jesus says that He has overcome the world. And what a great blessing for that is for us to remember that, yes, there will be trying times, but we need to set our minds on the Spirit, because we have that hope of the future of knowing that we will be at peace when Christ returns for the final time and brings us to our eternal resting place. The law that we easily break cannot keep God's law. Those who follow the ways of the flesh cannot stand God's law. Well, because God's law was weakened through sin, like we talked about. Then we go on verse 9. You, however, are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit. In fact, if in fact the Spirit of God dwells in you, anyone who does not have the Spirit of Christ does not belong to Him. But if Christ is in you, although the body is dead because of sin, the Spirit is life because of righteousness. If the Spirit of Him who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, He who raised Jesus Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies through His Spirit who dwells in you. So there's the hope, dear brothers and sisters. That's what I was talking about just a few minutes ago. That we have that hope that just as God raised Jesus from the dead, He will raise us from the dead and bring us to life, to newness of life, in and through faith in His Son and in Him. Because the Spirit dwells in us as well, just as the Spirit dwelled in Jesus. We do have flesh, of course, but through faith in Jesus Christ, the Spirit dwells within us. And what great news that is for us. And what great news it is for us to know that even though we will die eventually, we will rise to new life with Jesus. And that's my message and hope for you here today, is that you may see this wonderful gift that God has given us. We are free, and as you celebrate the 4th of July this week and later this week, just know that you are free. You are free in Christ Jesus, who loves you, who died for you, and rose again, and will come back to bring you home to your eternal resting place. So, dear brothers and sisters in Christ, have a great day. Amen.